Hello guys, welcome to my channel where stories filled with revenge, moral lessons and love are told. Don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. My name is Alara. I was the fourth of 7 children, though you wouldn't have known it if you'd seen the way my family carried themselves. From the outside, we looked like a picture-perfect household, talented, united, brimming with music and laughter. But I lived on the edges of that picture, faint and blurred, like someone forgotten in the background. My parents, Marlene and Victor, poured their attention into whichever child could make the family shine at that moment. My older brother Tobias with his perfect tenor voice, my sister Isla with her violin, and my younger siblings who seemed born with charisma. I, on the other hand, was told I was tone deaf and perhaps more cruelly, that I wasn't funny. That label clung to me. I was quiet, not because I had nothing to say, but because my words seemed to fall into a void. When I tried to sing with them, laughter would ripple across the room, not the kind of laughter that embraces you, but the kind that reminds you of where you don't belong. If I tried to joke, the silence afterward crushed me harder than the teasing ever could. I began to shrink myself, folding my voice into smaller and smaller spaces until it barely existed. The family retreat was always the crown jewel of the year. It was this sprawling event that gathered not just us but cousins, aunts, uncles, and distant relatives whose names I struggled to remember. Every year, I clung to the hope that maybe this time I'd feel part of something bigger than myself, maybe this time they'd see me. But then came the call that burned a hole into my chest. My mother's voice was smooth, as if what she said required no thought at all. "Hey Lara," she began, "we had to make some tough decisions for the retreat this year. There just isn't enough space for you." For a moment, I thought I had misheard her. Not enough space? My mind flickered with images of the lodge we'd always rented, massive halls filled with laughter and endless rows of bunk beds. Not enough space for me, the only one left out of 118 relatives. I tried to steady my voice, though my throat ached with unshed tears. "Not enough space?" I asked. "But everyone else is going, right?" Her pause was confirmation enough, but she still said it, a final nail hammered in without mercy. "Yes, everyone else. We'll tell you all about it when we get back." I hung up before my father could add anything. The silence that filled my small apartment afterward was deafening. It was the kind of silence that sinks its claws into your chest, the kind that makes you question whether you've ever truly mattered. I scrolled through social media during those days, my feed flooded with pictures of smiling faces, bonfires, and matching family shirts. My siblings tagged each other in posts filled with inside jokes and hashtags. I was a ghost, not because I had died, but because they had decided I wasn't worth existing in their circle. Memories of my childhood came rushing back in waves I hadn't invited. I remembered the school talent show where Tobias sang and received a standing ovation while my poem about stars was dismissed as boring. I remembered Isla being praised for her violin recital while my attempts at storytelling were brushed off as daydreaming too much. I remembered sitting at the dinner table, watching my siblings bicker and laugh while I ate quietly, careful not to draw the kind of attention that would only remind me of my insignificance. It wasn't until much later that I understood what my silence had cost me. It had robbed me of my identity. In the nights after the retreat exclusion, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, my chest heavy with grief. But beneath the grief was a flicker of something else, rage. It wasn't loud, not yet. It was quiet, pulsing, waiting. I thought about all the years I had tried to make myself smaller, more palatable, more acceptable, and how in the end it hadn't saved me from rejection. They had cast me out anyway, and suddenly all the shrinking felt like betrayal, not just theirs, but mine too. I realized then that if I stayed in the shadows they had assigned me, I would never breathe freely again. I had to claw my way into the light, even if my family refused to see me. It was in that desperate moment that the idea of comedy returned to me. I had once whispered jokes to myself in the mirror, imagining laughter I never received. Maybe now was the time to make those whispers roar. The first step was terrifying. I signed up for an open mic night at a tiny club downtown. The room smelled of stale beer and possibility, the kind of place where dreams could either ignite or die quietly. My palms were slick, my heart thundered, but when I stepped onto that stage, something inside me shifted. I spoke about being the forgotten child, the so-called not funny one, twisting my pain into punchlines. And then it happened. Laughter, real laughter. It washed over me, not cruel, not mocking, but warm, alive, electric. For the first time, I felt seen. That night, walking home under the streetlights, I realized I had discovered a voice I never knew I had permission to use. My family might have left me behind, but the world outside was willing to listen. And in that discovery, the seed of my revenge began to sprout, quiet but unstoppable. The nights at the club became my salvation. Each week, I scribbled thoughts into a worn-out notebook, fragments of jokes and sharp edges of memories that I reshaped into stories worth laughing at. The dimly lit stage turned into a kind of confessional, a place where I could finally peel back the layers of invisibility that had smothered me since childhood. Every time the crowd laughed, I felt the weight of my family's silence loosen. Its grip on my chest. It was intoxicating, like oxygen rushing into lungs that had been deprived for too long. I began experimenting with vulnerability, telling stories about being the forgotten sibling. I joked about how my family could remember the name of a cousin's dog but would forget to wish me a happy birthday. I mimicked the voices of my siblings, their exaggerated confidence and my parents' dismissive tones, all wrapped in humor that made strangers roar with laughter. For the first time, my experiences weren't trivial. They were powerful enough to fill a room. At the end of one show, a woman came up to me with tears in her eyes. "You told my story," she whispered. "My family treated me the same way." Her words stunned me. It wasn't just comedy anymore, it was connection. I was turning private pain into a public mirror where others saw themselves. That realization gave me courage I didn't know I possessed. As the months passed, I became a regular act. My name, Ilara James, began appearing on small posters taped to lampposts and calf walls. I wasn't famous, not yet, but I was building something that was mine, something no one could take away. And yet, in my eagerness to prove I mattered, I still turned to the people who had always denied me. I invited my family. At first, cautiously, slipping the details into a group chat. "Hey, I'm performing Friday night. I would love it if you could come." No response. I told myself maybe they were busy, maybe they missed the message. So I tried again, sending flyers, even calling once or twice. My father answered one call, his voice weary as if I'd disturbed something important. "Comedy? That's nice, Lara. But you know we're swamped." Swamped. That was always their word when it came to me. Swamped with church, swamped with work, swamped with celebrating someone else's accomplishments. I stopped asking after the fifth attempt, but the silence gnawed at me. The people who should have been my foundation didn't even care enough to sit in the back of a bar for 5 minutes. I started noticing how differently I carried myself when I performed compared to when I visited them. On stage, I was sharp, funny, alive. At home, I shrank again, slipping into the role they had written for me. One evening, after a particularly raucous show where the audience gave me a standing ovation, I went straight to a family dinner. The contrast was suffocating. My siblings were bragging about promotions, engagements, music recitals. When I mentioned my set, my mother's lips curved into that tight smile she reserved for inconveniences. "That's cute, Lara. But when are you going to do something serious with your life?" The table laughed as if her dismissal was the punchline. I smiled weakly, but inside, I was crumbling. Cute, not serious, not enough. Their words were cages, and every time I stepped into that house, I allowed them to lock me back inside. But something was shifting. Each time I returned to the stage, I became braver, sharper, more ruthless in my honesty. I joked about being uninvited to the family retreat, the absurdity of being the only one excluded. The audience gasped, then erupted with laughter, some shaking their heads in disbelief. Afterward, a man approached me and said, "You're brilliant. The way you turn pain into comedy, it's raw, it's real. Don't ever stop." I carried his words home like a shield. Maybe my family thought comedy wasn't serious, but strangers were telling me it mattered. And for the first time in my life, I believed them more than I believed my own blood. Still, the wound of the retreat never fully closed. I would scroll through the photos late at night, my siblings in matching t-shirts, my parents glowing with pride in the center of the group. 118 people, and somehow there wasn't space for me. The absurdity of it festered inside me until it became too heavy to hold quietly. I knew I had to let it out, but not in a way they expected. Not through confrontation in the kitchen or another ignored invitation. I decided to pour it into my craft. I wrote a new set, one I knew would cut deep. It wasn't cruel for cruelty's sake, it was my truth, laid bare with every ounce of pain, humor, and rage I had stored up for years. When I finally performed it, I felt the audience leaning in, caught between laughter and disbelief. I ended with a line that struck like lightning. My family said there wasn't enough space for me at the retreat. I guess 118 was their limit. But look, there's space for me here, with all of you. The room exploded, not just with laughter but with applause that thundered in my bones. Walking off that stage, I knew I had crossed a threshold. I wasn't invisible anymore, and my family could no longer control the narrative of who I was. For years, they had dismissed me as the quiet one, the untalented one, the not funny one. But in that room, under those lights, I was undeniable. It was only a matter of time before the video surfaced online, shared by someone in the crowd. And when it did, it spread faster than I could have imagined. Strangers tagged their friends, commenting things like, "This is me," or "Her family sounds like mine." My follower count grew overnight. For the first time, I wasn't just a girl with a microphone. I was a voice that resonated. I didn't know yet how much this would cost me, how much it would enrage the very people I had spent my life trying to please. All I knew was that I had stepped into something unstoppable. And whether my family liked it or not, I was finally being heard. The clip spread across platforms like wildfire. One day I had a modest handful of followers. The next I was waking up to thousands of notifications. People from different corners of the world wrote to me, sharing their own stories of being overlooked, dismissed, or outright rejected by their families. Some told me I had given them courage, others said I had made them laugh through tears. For once, my existence had meaning far beyond the boundaries of my bloodline. And that was exactly what terrified my family. It didn't take long before I started getting calls. First from Tobias, who never wasted time being subtle. "Hey Lara, what the hell did you do? Do you know how embarrassing this is for mom and dad?" His voice was sharp, laced with indignation, as though I had committed a crime. I didn't flinch. I told the truth, I said simply. That truth had rattled him more than I could have hoped. Soon after, Marlene and Victor called, their voices tight, brittle with fury. My mother hissed through the phone, "You've humiliated us in front of the whole family. Do you realize the damage you've done?" I almost laughed at the irony. Humiliated? Damage? For years, they had treated me like a disposable afterthought. And yet, when their image was at stake, suddenly they cared. My father tried a different approach, calmer, but no less venomous. "Take the video down, Lara. It's not good for anyone. You'll regret this." For a brief moment, guilt pricked at me. Not because I thought I was wrong, but because old habits die hard. I had been conditioned to silence myself for their comfort. But then I remembered the ache of watching them drive off to that retreat without me, the silence of birthdays forgotten, the weight of being the family's ghost. No, this time, I wasn't folding back into their shadow. "I won't take it down," I told them. For once in my life, I won't be erased. The fallout was swift. Cousins unfriended me on social media, aunts sent long messages about family loyalty, and some even threatened that lawyers could be involved if I didn't stop slandering. It was laughable to imagine threatening legal action over a set of jokes that just happened to mirror reality. But behind their anger was fear that their pristine family image had cracks they could no longer plaster over. And I, the quiet one, had become the hammer. Even with the storm of backlash, I felt lighter than I ever had. I blocked numbers, muted group chats, shut every digital door through which their poison could seep in. For once, my silence wasn't submission, it was protection. The people who truly mattered now weren't the ones who shared my DNA, but the ones who showed up for me every night in dimly lit clubs, laughing and clapping with open hearts, and the comedy world kept opening wider for me. Invitations to bigger venues rolled in, podcasts wanted to hear my story, and journalists framed me as the comedian who turned family rejection into raw, viral truth. Each step forward felt like a reclamation, a declaration that I was more than the dismissive labels my family had glued onto me. I was not tone deaf. I was not unfunny. I was not invisible. I was Lara James, and people were listening, still. There were nights when I lay awake, the echoes of my parents' voices creeping into the quiet. I wondered if they missed me at all, if somewhere beneath their obsession with image there was an ounce of regret. But then I would think of the girl I had once been, sitting quietly at the edge of the table, waiting for permission to be seen. And I promised her I would never go back. The true revenge wasn't the viral video, or the applause, or the headlines. It was the fact that I had built a life where their exclusion no longer defined me. Every laugh from an audience was a reminder that my voice carried weight. Every message from a stranger was proof that my story mattered. My family had denied me a seat at their retreat, but the world had pulled up a chair for me, front and center. When the next retreat came around, I didn't even wait for an invitation that I knew would never come. Instead, I booked a headline show the same weekend. The theater was packed, the air buzzing with anticipation. As I stepped onto the stage, I paused, letting the lights warm my skin. My family said there wasn't enough space for me. I began, the audience already chuckling, knowing what was coming. Turns out, they were right. There wasn't enough space because I needed an entire stage to myself. The roar of laughter that followed was thunderous, reverberating deep inside me. That night, when I walked off the stage, tears slipped down my face, but not from pain. They were tears of release, of victory, of finally standing tall in a life I had carved with my own hands. My revenge had never been about making them hurt. It had been about proving I could thrive without their validation. And I had .so when I say this now, I mean it with all the weight of my journey. If your family cannot see you, if they cannot love you as you are allowed to walk away. You are allowed to build your own family, to find your own people, to write your own story. That is the sweetest revenge. Moral lesson. Life has a way of teaching us that blood is not always thicker than water. Sometimes the people meant to hold you up are the very ones who clip your wings. I learned that waiting for their approval was like waiting for rain in a drought that would never come. But when I stepped into my own light, when I dared to turn my pain into laughter, I discovered a truth more powerful than any family retreat or photograph could hold. Belonging is not about where you're born, it's about where you are seen. If you've ever been dismissed, ignored, or told you aren't enough, know that you are not defined by their blindness. Your voice matters, your story matters, and there are people out there who will celebrate you for exactly who you are. Sometimes we have to walk away from the tables that refuse to make room for us and build new tables where everyone has a seat. So choose yourself, choose your peace, and never be afraid to turn your scars into something that makes the world listen. Don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment with what you've learned today.